Remember me? Yeah, you do. You're even fucking uglier than I am now. What did they do to you? Doesn't matter. That's not how it ends for you, brother. You know who's coming for you. You've always known.
In the novels, the last we hear of Sandor Clegane, well, we don't really know that it's him. Just like in the show, Arya leaves him for dead, but it's left more ambiguous in the fact that we never really hear back from him until in A Feast for Crows during their search for Sansa and Arya, where Brienne of Tarth and Podrick Payne end up visiting this random monastery on the Quiet Isle, and they notice this imposing figure wearing a hood. They eventually talk to this dude named the Elder Brother, and he tells Brienne that the Hound is dead and that he actually buried the Hound himself. Basically, he ends up going on to further tell her that he found the Hound at the Trident, and he was drawn in by the cries of pain that Sandor were letting out. So basically, he ends up putting poultice on his wounds, trying to save him, but ultimately, the Hound dies right there. In this video, I want to discuss some of the foreshadowing that we've seen on the TV show for how Sandor Clegane's journey will end. Let's begin. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal will be 427. Also, make sure to subscribe and consider checking out my Patreon over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. That is a great way to support your favorite content creators. Also, make sure you have your notifications turned on all the way. Now, I'm not exactly a numbers guy, but the first bit of foreshadowing I want to use in this video actually comes from the Dragon Pit, the very last episode of Game of Thrones Season 7. At exactly 13 minutes and 33 seconds, the Hound walks up and meets the Mountain. Now, like I said, I'm not a numbers guy, but that 333 stuck out to me. That comes across in my own personal life a lot. And like I said, I don't really pay attention to it, but the fact that this happens right as Sandor walks up to Gregor, this to me means that, it's similar to what the angel number 333 means, which it symbolizes aid and encouragement. It means that your angels are just nearby, ready to help, and reassures you that your plans are doing well. Listen to this last part, it's the most important. It sends the message that your prayers have been answered, and seeing 333 means that whatever you requested for is on its way to you. Now, obviously, that's a little crazy. Did Sir Hunts really just relate the number pattern of when the Mountain meets the Hound for the very first time in Season 7, and really for the first time since early on in the series? Does that mean something? Well, yes, it does. It means to all of us viewers that the Hound will have his answers prayed. Now, if you remember, this second bit of foreshadowing goes all the way back to Season 4. This is with Arya and Sandor. These are some of my favorite moments of the Game of Thrones series, and honestly, Season 4 is probably my favorite season next to Season 7. Now, during their many adventures of traveling around the world together, pretty much during this time frame, just as a quick reminder, that Arya is the Hound's adopted daughter.
Only the ones I'm going to kill.
It's as good a thing as any to keep a person going. Better than most. We come across my brother. Maybe we can both cross a name off a list.
Now, as you just saw from that clip, Arya is told by the Hound that maybe if we meet my brother, we can scratch a name off of our list together. Now, I've been pretty much insinuating that Clegane Bowl is going to happen, and it's bound to go down. One of the ways, if it does happen, one of the ways that I could see it going down is something very similar to what we saw last season. Whereas in Sandor will go to King's Landing, meet up with the Hound, and they'll have a show-off. Now, obviously, that didn't happen in the Dragon Pit because there were so many rulers around. I feel like that's the only reason that kept Sandor somewhat contained. And not only that, he's also a changed man, so he's not the same person he was in Season 1. Also, if the writers had put in Clegane Bowl in those moments, it would have been wrapped up quickly because there's so many people around that would have stopped the fight. But for the most part, it seems as though the Hound's journey is to kill Gregor Clegane. So one of the ways that could happen is if, let's just say, Winterfell is attacked. Jon Snow, Daenerys, and everyone else are forced to flee Winterfell, and this could be because of Cersei or the Night King. For this theory, we'll say it's because of Cersei. So Cersei has the Golden Company attack Winterfell, and everyone's fleeing. So then we have someone who has to volunteer to go and take care of Cersei. Obviously, discussing or trying to work out some sort of truth with her is not worth it, because she's just going to backstab them the first chance she gets. So Arya and the Hound can then willingly volunteer to go down to King's Landing and take care of Cersei. Now, Jon obviously wouldn't let his sister go, but his sister is not Arya Stark anymore. She is no one. Arya has these two different personalities that she battles with. That's no one, and that's Arya Stark of Winterfell. Now, last season, we saw her battling with these two counterparts when she was trying to scare the living crap out of Sansa. So that's going to continue heavy on, especially when we see that it's Cersei's treachery that caused them to have to flee Winterfell. So, long story short, they make it down to King's Landing, and Arya uses those same passageways that she used to spy on Varys and Illyrio Mopatis. She uses that same way to get into the kingdom. Now, the only person that I mainly see going down in these crypts is Qyburn. This gives the perfect opportunity for her to kill Qyburn, use his face to sneak in with Cersei, and get Cersei to come down to, let's say, a certain room where Sandor's waiting, and of course she brings the mountain. There we have Sandor and the mountain fighting each other with the help of Arya, and this could be why she's given that dagger, because we do know that his armor is super thick, but Valyrian steel can cut through all that. So maybe Arya kills the mountain with combination help from Sandor, but that's all just misleading. I think that the only reason why it's been set up so far in this series, and I know you're like, dude, you were going so far with this. Why are you jumping off the cliff now? Well, I think it's all misleading. I think we're supposed to believe that Sandor, or the Hound rather, is out to kill his brother, when we know that Sandor has a greater purpose, and just like in the novels, the Hound most likely died after sustaining all those injuries. Just like how Bran died that night in the cave, well, the persona of the Hound died once he received all those injuries. Now, you can even say that the fact that he was so hesitant to go back into the fight after he was found by Brother Ray and after Brother Ray healed him, the reason why is because that Hound persona died, so then when he left again, he donned it, but not really. I think the only way to truly become a whole and complete person is by embracing the ugly sides of your personality. So you have to have the yin and the yang. You have to accept your dark side, and this is what Sandor did. He didn't necessarily become the Hound again, but he embraced his dark side and realized that there was still a fight to be fought, this time for the Lord of Light, for the Lord of R'hllor. What I'm getting at here is that I think the mountain may not even be a part of his future. Like, yes, he obviously had the foreshadowing. They said, you know what's coming to you. He didn't necessarily say that he was going to deliver it. So maybe the mountain will eventually die, and this will free the Hound from Sandor completely. This will make Sandor realize his actual goal, or his actual destiny, which is to destroy the Night King. I feel like it's a little bit repetitive because I mentioned this so many times in my videos, but the Hound, or Sandor rather, has been told by so many different people that he's the chosen one of the Lord of Light, that the gods have a plan for him. He has to embrace his destiny if he ever wants to find peace. Now, I'm not saying it's completely out of question for there to be a Clegane Bowl in Game of Thrones Season 8, because there still is a good chance there is. This is the final version of this show in its iteration, and there's only 6 episodes left, and we want them to all be action-packed. They've been leading up for Clegane Bowl almost the entirety of this series, but remember, we already got it in Season 1. I see Sandor in Game of Thrones Season 8 making it to the final battle. He may be one of the ones who dies, but then is resurrected by Beric. Beric does something very similar to this in the novels. He's resurrected by Thoros of Myr, but he ends up giving the kiss of life to Lady Stoneheart in order to bring her back. So I see something very similar to this happening in Game of Thrones Season 8. There is a moment where Sandor is mortally wounded, he dies, but then he's ultimately brought back by Beric. So that final gift that Beric has to give to him, with as far as just telling him what his destiny is, allowing him to look into the flames to actually see what it is the Lord of Light wants him to do, maybe this is the final gift that's given to Sandor, making him one of the last heroes who survives. Now remember, the idea of bittersweet is drilled in our heads when it comes to predicting the end game of Game of Thrones, so having a character like Sandor actually live on could be part of one of those sweet endings. Now in the books, everyone thinks that he's that secret gravedigger, or that hooded figure that's limping around the Quiet Isle, so who's to say, since he did dig graves in Game of Thrones Season 7 for the family he robbed, who's to say he doesn't dig graves for all of the heroes that have fallen in this fight for the long nights? Now, I know this is a bit backtracking, but I have to do it if I want to make a thorough video. Now, obviously, there is a large, probably like a 75% chance that Clegane Bowl will actually go down. One of the ways they will explain it and not have Sandor turns back into the Hound is that basically the Hound has to be laid to rest, and the only way to lay him to rest is by completing that last name on his list, so to speak. So if that is the case, and the Hound has to kill his brother, and then he's able to move on and become, this gravedigger, or maybe even just someone who follows Arya around on her journeys and just sort of acts as her protector, I would love to see that. But maybe he has to kill his brother, and in doing so, this allows him to see the end game for his journey. One thing I didn't add to sort of embrace the fact that Sandor will likely die fighting the Hound or just die in King's Landing was this brief conversation that he has with Tyrion at the very beginning of Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 7, right before he goes up and talks to the Hound. Now, in this scene, as you can see right now, he's mentioning that this place is crappy, this is a crap city, and that there's always some Clegane to clean up the Lannisters' mess. So, this is clear indication that Sandor may in fact die fighting Gregor, who is cleaning up Cersei's mess. Now, I didn't really want to glaze over it too much, but this video has to be kept within a certain time constraint. So if you guys want me to touch more so on numbers, or timestamps rather, and what they mean in Game of Thrones, let me know down below in the comments section, and I'll get a video cooking up for you guys, because there's actually several moments in Game of Thrones Season 7 where certain scenes happen at certain times, and those times are numbers that may have some other significant meaning in the bigger picture for Game of Thrones. Now, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this. The like goal is going to be 427. Also, please make sure to subscribe, and then make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Super special shout out to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video right now. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Review.